I'm the CEO of a company called Filament that focuses in blockchain and mobility, or vehicles and automotive. We're based out of the United States, but I'm here today to moderate this amazing panel about supply chain and blockchain. And so really talking about how Hyperledger specifically plays within the supply chain ecosystem. With me, I have Carrie Corpella, academic researcher at La Pintrata University of Technology. And then I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. Peter Novotny, research staff member at IBM TJ Watson Research Center. Then I have Yu Zhang, senior architect at Huawei, as well, to join this panel. And so you have quite a good mix here. You've got architects, people actually building. You've got researchers, the people ensuring that these are correct and working well. And then you have the implementers as well. And so with that, let me hand it off to each of you to introduce a little bit about yourself and the projects you're working on.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been interesting already have these keynote speakers, but we as researchers, we always should know the past and what has been written on this issue, but now we are in new technology. Still, it was 500 years ago, just a few hundred kilometers from here, where Luca Pacioli developed a business system that is still used all over the world, and that is ledger, auditing, double bookkeeping system. So that is very interesting that now we are developing ledger on blockchain, and I would say in the very big picture that this blockchain ledger is between the organization, where Luca Pacioli developed ledger within organization. So this is a missing part of our future. So long live ledger. I'm a researcher of information logistic integration, and I'm working in 2 big business cases.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Peter. I'm a research staff member in IBM Research in New York, and I work on several different aspects of Hyperledger. I contribute to the code base and innovations into the fabric. I work on solutions and design and architecture of solutions which are built based on fabric, which includes supply chain solutions. And I also work on technologies which are built aside of fabric, which are related to analytics compliance, building a blockchain platform in the cloud, and this kind of technologies.
Okay, hello everyone, and hello Allison. My name is Liu Zhang, and I come from Huawei. I'm the solution architecture of Huawei blockchain service. We launched a BaaS platform this year. It's based on Hyperledger Fabric. So we have joined a number of partners to develop different industry solutions in our BaaS platform, such as taxation and copyright and data exchange, where the supply chain and supply chain finance is very, very important scenarios, we think. So later we will discuss how the blockchain enables the supply chain and supply chain finance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your interest. So with that, we're going to get started. Let me move to this slide. So we have a slide that has been put together by some of the panelists here to really kind of give a visual while we talk through this, because it can be a fairly complex ecosystem, as you can see. And so they may be referring to this at some point as they discuss. But I wanted to start off with really, you know, in the supply chain space within most industries, we have a significant desire to reduce costs, right? A cost center that's often discussed. Carrie, let's start with you. What sorts of work have you been doing around specifically focusing on cost reduction within the supply chain industries?
Okay. Here in the picture you can see that in the upper there is a mill, meaning that there is a biorefinery industry, which is one of our focus area, and we are using raw material as tree and very many other materials. So we calculated in our business case 40 big companies, 20 of them were buyers and 20 of them were suppliers. And we calculated how much manual work they are doing when they are integrating the information based on manual processes. And there were some 11 million transactions between those companies, 2.5 million invoices. And those companies were using manual work worth of 580 million euros per year. And that was divided like 200 million in ordering processes and 220 million in logistic processes. The problem is that the manual work in high economic countries like in Finland, the average cost is 37 euros per hour. And in developing countries, it's 5 euros per hour. So we have lost our competitive 2 to 4% because we are doing manual work. And that's why we are now focusing on blockchain.
Interesting. Peter?
I can give you an example from a platform which is IBM building, which is called TradeLens, which is related to shipping of goods and containers around the world. And when we started to look at this business case, it turns out that 15% of cost of shipping goods around the world is related to shipping the information about those goods around the world. So when you send container, in parallel you need to send also the documents which represent the content of the container. And you can't send that information along the same container. So you need to send it by somebody else on different path. And this represents 15% of overall world trade cost. So using blockchain eliminates all this and reduces this to the fraction of percent. So the technology allows us to significantly speed up, but also eliminate cost on different fronts.
All those unknown costs that go along with supply chain, moving actual goods and services, or goods through services. Gotcha. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, the blockchain can, I think it can solve the trust problem in the society and in the whole supply chain and supply chain finance. Because each company and is a supplier and the buyer and the logistic companies is not trusted with each other, maybe. So if we use the supply chain we use the blockchain in supply chain, so it may be reduce the trust risk, I think.
Okay, so you're seeing the cost savings as a risk mitigation approach.
Yes, because we have to take more verification in it, and we have to do a lot of things on this. It costs time and it wastes time, I think is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So on the flip side of this, to throw this question back at you all, is that cost center is obviously very important. As was mentioned in the keynote earlier, and this is something that actually Filament focuses on as well quite significantly, is that there are new business models, there are new profit centers, new businesses that can and should be built, quite frankly, on top of blockchain technology. And so within the supply chain, have there been any situations that, and I'll just open up to any of you, that you found, or you may have stumbled into this opportunity to actually build a new product or a new service on top of this that just simply wasn't possible before? So not really a cost center, but more profit center. Anyone?
Okay. See, when we built blockchain and all the information is on blockchain, on supply chain, then the question is that how can we use this information, for example, for new value-add services? And in our case, when we are building big ships, there is a lot of activities that suppliers need to develop, and they are always sort of lack of money because the involvement of the deliveries is a long time period, and those companies are SME companies, so they don't have that much money, and the balance sheet is not good enough to get credit from the banks. So the issue is that how can we sort of develop, based on trusted transactions, new financing services for those SME companies? And Peter has helped us on this issue.
So we've seen, so there are, let's say, two levels of where this applies. One is that as we bringing information from different ends and put them into some unified data storage, which is available in multiple entities, then we can transform the existing processes in a way which facilitate creation of, let's say, new ways to working with the information and new products as well. So one can be, for example, if you have goods which haven't been, the information about them wasn't available before, and one new type of product you can associate with it is insurance. Once the insurance company has available reliable information, at that moment, that information can be used to actually insure the goods. Others are related to what Kari mentioned, how financial institutions can work with information. And that is that, let's say if you have a typical trade shipping of the goods and trade scenario, you will have a financial instrument which will provide assurance that there is going to be payment, let's say letter of credit, in such a way that the payment is completed at the end when the goods are delivered. While if you have a reliable solution where information about shipping that product along the different points along the path is known, you can release subsequently different parts of the payment to the supplier or to the producer of the goods without actually delivering the goods to the end. And there are many different instances of how the information can be used.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you have anything? So this kind of leads me to the next kind of point here, is that such an important part of supply chain is the capital, the financing, the actual, being able to pay for this, which you both alluded to already. How intrinsic or how connected, how inseparable do you think trade finance is from the supply chain industry? Can you have one without the other? Should you ever have one without the other? Does blockchain solve all of this? Or are there some nuances in there that you've learned in kind of digging into this on how those two aspects of this global supply chain industry actually play and contrast with each other? Any thoughts around that? It's a bigger question, I know, but I thought I would throw it out there.
Everybody will have their own opinion on this.
Sure, well, let's hear them. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's a definitely big topic. Now, we're not going to have one blockchain which will solve all these problems. But I can imagine that, and that's where we are on the path today, is that we are addressing different aspects which are related to trading, to shipping, to logistics, and to associated financial processing and different services on top of that. So, and I think that where we are today is that we are building the elementary pieces, it is proofs of concepts and pilots, which are addressing these different bits of those, of each of these domains. And as we are progressing further, we are getting to the point when they are getting integrated, and where the information and the benefit of storing information in blockchain and exchanging information in blockchain is becoming apparent, and allows integration of those different solutions, which goes to overall addressing of this chain of problems. Yeah. But there's not going to be one solution. It will take a long time. It's going to be multiple different technologies, and we don't have even those technologies today. But we are on the path to actually develop them and to address those problems.
Yes, I think in supply chain we can choose which company we use, because we use the shared ledger and by supply chain, by blockchain. By this, every company and every shipper have the true data in the chain. So if we exchange with each other, it will be real data, and we can say which supplier is gooder and which buyer is gooder and which customer is gooder. So in this, just I say, it make a trust digital economy ecosystem. So we use this, we can make our whole supply chain and supply chain finance better, like this.
So you see them together, the financing and the supply chain itself.
Yeah, both.
Great, yeah.
Okay, I'll take a little different approach. That is the information or products that we need on for example, in manufacturing or building ship. For example, when we are running this paper mill, there is like 600,000 different components. Or when we are building a ship, there is like 1 million different components. And those components are we are running them over 20, 30 years. I mean, the ships are in the seas, and the manufacturing is maintained so long period. So the product, it's a question of product life cycle management after end of the day. So, and that is very much related also the risk, like Leo is saying. So we need to build systems where we can find how these product lifecycle management can be shared over the blockchain over the time. And that is going to be very valuable. But we have just made the first standards so that we can establish these kind of issues.
So just getting started.
Yes.
Yep. Great. So this is a big question. This is probably the biggest question here at this conference, and it's been in this case for blockchain for a while, is that when we get to production, or when we will get to production, or what does production even mean, or production deployment, usually that always requires some set of stakeholders within either a company you're working for, a company you're working with, or that you're working at, alongside with, perhaps as a partnership. What sorts of experiences have all of you had in terms of actually getting stakeholder buy-in, either with a partner? I know that you two have worked together on a project, and so how did that work? How did you actually get people to buy into the idea of blockchain in this particular use case in supply chain, if they were new to the idea, or if they were maybe a little bit hesitant about using that technology for this use case? Any war stories?
I think there is going to be 3 different stories. Huawei will tell the story how Leo will tell how Huawei has done. IBM is telling how they are making one of the big, from technology point of view with the industry, and we are sort of giving a story that how we start from research point of view. So,
well, you should moderate then. You're doing a great job. No, please. I would love to hear the stakeholder idea.
From my side, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
I don't share something about the supply chain because I want to share in taxation. Because in taxation, the country is the best benefit. So the country push to the blockchain to use in the taxation. So it's very important for the key stakeholders to push the supply chain, to push the blockchain use. So it is, I think they are the same in supply chain and supply chain finance. It should be a key stakeholder to push it to approve. I think they like this.
So you see similarities between finance use of blockchain and supply chain use of blockchain?
Yes, it should be a key
stakeholder.
Yeah.
Understood. Yep. I see. Great.
I can point to 2 examples. One is IBM developed a ledger and blockchain solution for food trust with Walmart. And what we've seen is that the key stakeholder there is a Walmart, and they, over time, gain confidence that the benefit from using blockchain is really significant. And it was about 1 month ago announced that Walmart now demands that all the suppliers actually really put the information about every detail of the supply chain on the ledger, so that it can be, the point of the solution is to trace the different products back to the sources. And so in this case, Walmart is pushing for the utilization of blockchain. Another case is from media domain, where we work with company which is center mediating company within the buyers and suppliers of advertisements, and they took active role, and they are the key stakeholder who is developing a large blockchain network, and they are themselves demonstrating the benefit of that network, and there is a large interest from the different participants on the supply and buy side, and they are the key stakeholder, which is the decisive power to actually get them on the network.
So to dig into the Walmart example for a moment, that's a really big deal. I mean, that was a big move, and that was a very good established deployment for the entire ecosystem, in my opinion. So how did you actually get, like, was there someone at Walmart who came to you? I mean, I don't need to know the business details, of course, and the audience doesn't, but how did they finally see, how did you represent the value to them where it made it obvious that they needed to move forward with this project with you?
I can't go into the very beginning, but what I can say is that eventually, Walmart was the main interested party, and the question was what benefit blockchain can provide. It became apparent that significant benefit, and I can give you the one example was that there was an initial exercise by the VP in Walmart who was responsible for the supply chain, and he asked his employees to trace back a box of mango. And on average, the employees needed about 6.5 days to get back to the very beginning of where the box came from. And when the solution was developed and the information was available, the average time is under 2 seconds. So there is very little to actually debate whether there is a benefit or not.
So you showed more than you told them about blockchain, right?
Yes.
You demonstrated it.
Yes, we can say so.
From an academic standpoint, I'm interested to hear how you think about stakeholders.
Yeah, so we have 2 big business cases. One of them is around biorefinery industry in traditional way, meaning that how do we develop from tree all kinds of products to the world. And our companies are working in 93 different countries in the world, and the market share of, for example, in paper is over 30% in the world paper. So, but those companies are small still in the large scale. They are not like Walmart, and there is 3 companies in Finland, and then there are lots of suppliers. The same issue in maritime industry. We are making one of the most beautiful cruises to Caribbean seas, but still they are small companies. So we have found out that we need to establish ecosystem company within these companies to sort of start making the real solutions platform for these companies. And now we are in the phase where we are sort of next 2-3 months we are developing the platform. We have already piloted, and so the platform for companies to have the basic transactions in top of blockchain.
So stakeholder standpoint, does that come from that actual small and medium-sized business customers, or does it come from internally more?
It is always the big companies are leading, but the big companies are leading the solutions that even the SME companies can use. And when we have solutions ready for SMEs, and they need to be efficient and cost-efficient, low-cost solutions, then the ecosystem start moving.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you. So no deployment of blockchain is without its pain points. I think we all recognize that. Anyone who's tried to even deploy pre-version 1.0 of Sawtooth or any of these other aspects of different Hyperledger projects will know the pain that it takes to get something like that up and running. So I wanted to ask the panelists about basically what challenges have you all encountered in trying to deploy supply chain or supply chain finance or supply chain risk management, any aspect of what you're all trying to do within, not to really pick on Hyperledger, but within the blockchain ecosystem, right? This is not inherent to Hyperledger only. These are difficult new problems. A lot of engineers and technical people need to get their heads wrapped around this. What challenges have you found so far in what you've worked on, and how did you all address them? Open it up.
I would say that we need proof of concepts, because those issues, we are now struggling with technologies like API integration technology and blockchain integration technology, and we are combining those two to top of our architecture on our ecosystem. So those are totally new issues to most of the companies. And even the IT people in the companies, they are not aware of these. So we need a lot of collaborative activities to sort of higher the level of understanding what these technologies are. And I would say that that is all our issue, to sort of go around and tell what these technologies can do and how the implementation can be done. But business believes when they see it works.
Sure.
So we're assessing it need to make the BaaS platform for companies easy to use it, not for companies to focus to the technical and to deploy it and to maintain it. So if a good BaaS container, a BaaS platform, it will be help our customer to easy to use blockchain, just like this.
So ease of use is a challenge that you've had to overcome with some of your customers?
Yeah, it's easy to use, and also the customer needs some performance they want to need to use, and security they want to use. There also maybe some problem we need to solve.
All of the things.
Yeah.
Totally. Peter?
Yeah, I can relate to that. That the technology is evolving today and is not mature, and so in many ways, technologies in different domains which are developed for many more years, it's much easier to deploy them. At the same time, from the real world use cases, what we've seen is that the major problem is onboarding, getting the companies to actually join the network. Because to develop the network itself, there's just one-off cost, and you maintain the network. And there is from an operational point of view, there is no really increase in the cost of how the network operates. But joining different companies, which each internally has their own system, their own SAP or whatever ERP system they have, each system is a little bit different, and each integration has a significant expense related to that. So one way we try to address the problem what we're carrying on the project of DBE, where we developed specific integration endpoints, which try to address that from one way, but only for certain types of systems. So generally, we in IBM work on also different types of endpoints, which allow some form of easy integration of existing systems into the network, so that the information can easily flow in and out, and then the different security and privacy aspects and so on start to play out.
Do you feel like that will expand to standardizing even APIs and integration points that you have to make with existing systems?
Yes, definitely,
Okay.
definitely. And that's actually what we found out in the DBE case, that the drive is towards standardization. And standardization within those networks, because similar networks will also contain similar data. And the other side is the outside of the network. So how do you actually do that, and whether those interfaces can look same or similar, and whether, let's say, between all SAP systems there can be some universal connector which allows the flow of the data.
Right.
I would like to say a few words about these standards and the meaning of standards. So we have already now one UBL standard, which is also ISO standard, so for business processes like quotation, ordering, logistic orders. This is the only standard in the world for that meaning, which is ready for. But if we think about that, when we start building the blockchain transactions, there will be a huge difference if that blockchain will have sort of structured data based on standard, compared to if there is just information which cannot be used very efficiently. So our point is that we need to use global standards to develop API integrations and also put them to blockchain.
Yeah, I want to say the standard may be two levels. One level is on the technical level. This is why we use the Hyperledger fabric, because this is why we are working with SAP to make the true platform, platform to connect together. And besides this, on this platform, it crosses different countries. And we can use the industry standard to make our logistic, our supply chain, such as less to work together. Yes, I think.
Do you see that standardization happening within groups like Hyperledger or ISO or IETF or IEEE, or where do you see what sorts of standards bodies do you think would be best fitted for these sorts of standards?
I would say that Hyperledger is a standard.
Indeed.
So this type of approach that we combine different companies in the world to sort of develop the coding and the rules together, and that's very meaningful. And but also that the Hyperledger is like a platform, but the information that we are storing to the platform, if that is also going to be structured, then we are in huge.
Very important.
Yeah. I would say that blockchain, because it's one set of data between multiple entities, exposes the need for standard, right? Because suddenly you see how the data from different entities look like, and you have a natural need to make them look exactly the same way. At the same time, if you look at, for example, the standard for order, which was developed by European Union, it's fairly complex. And so the drive towards having universal standards which capture all kinds of details of information, that's very useful. But at the same time, we need to know what information we really specifically need for that particular solution, because that's not going to be, in most cases, all those complex structures. So we need to figure out both the standard, but also how to really apply it in this kind of settings.
I can give a warning what we should not do. For example, we started electronic invoicing in Finland 2006. And in Europe, we are sending about 32 billion invoices. And we have 150 different standards of electronic invoicing in Europe. And we have 600 different operators in Europe trying to map those different standards. And the cost is about 2 billion euros for European companies. So that's not the way that we should go further.
It's a good point about the cost discussions we were having earlier, that you could actually introduce new costs if you don't standardize, to some degree, how you're going to use this new technology together. I think that's one of the things that's lost on a lot of blockchain use, is that the payload that goes inside the blockchain transaction is wide open. They're bytes. What do you want to put in them? And that's a whole other discussion, is what do you want to put in them for a particular use case? Supply chain finance, supply chain risk management. You can get as detailed as you want, but to standardize that's actually a very useful exercise, in my opinion, and I think the panelists agree. So with that, I want to open up to some questions. I don't know if we actually have microphones available, so you might just have to speak up loudly, but we have another 5 minutes or so. I do want to open up to questions to anyone. Please feel free to address your question to a particular panelist, or you can ask it to the entire panel itself, but wanted to make this a little bit of a dialogue here at the end. Any questions? Yes?
From what I've seen, the digitization of as is, I haven't seen that many cases. I've seen rather the vision of the new and how it really should look like. And the nice thing about blockchain is that you really have this end of what is, and then really you have the chance to really think about it from the new point of view. And then frequently what I've seen, actually, I think in all cases I've seen, there is really board of people, or there's IBM has something what we call design thinking session, where you put all these people together and they just dream up together the ideal solution, and the technical people try to implement it.
A question? Yes.
Can I also?
Oh yes, sorry, 1 moment.
Yeah. So from our point of view, I would say that an example of as is, our penetration in Finland about electronic invoicing is over 90%, and also in Scandinavia. But in the world, the penetration is around less than 20%. But countries like South America, there is already interoperability is higher than in Europe. So the companies come from different corners and start to pick up the new digital way of integration, and the point is that we are still doing a lot of manual work. For example, ordering a simple order, we are not able to sort of digitalize. So let's start from ordering processes and make them in standardized way. That's our focus. Next focus.
Great question.
Right. So 2 parts. One is how they get the data in, right, the integration. So I mentioned that we work on these endpoints, which allow this as easy as possible integration of existing systems they have, because they have their internal systems where all the information already exists, right? So we facilitate this onboarding and help them to do the onboarding. The other part is how structurally the network actually really looks like. Now, as you know, Fabric is a private blockchain and is designed to be private. That means you do not have the option to have infinite number of nodes. Rather, you optimize the size of the network towards your needs and operational needs. And so in this case, there are a number of nodes which are owned by a number of entities, but not by all entities. And as I mentioned, as Walmart is pushing for inclusion of all the suppliers, then you can imagine the number is very high. It's physically not possible to have them all equally participating as a stakeholder with number of nodes in the network. So the number of nodes is limited, but it's not limited to one entity. So it is a full blockchain where some participants have a identity, have access to that network to supply the information, but do not participate as owners and operators of peers.
Yes?
I have a related question on the Walmart case. All over the news. Sorry. I guess Walmart could have implemented the solution with a single database. Right? Why they went with blockchain-based solution? What are the main drivers?
That goes.
Yes. Of course, yes. Yeah.
I want to go back to Walmart case. Potentially, Walmart could have implemented the same solution with a single database, or centrally owned database, right? I want to understand what are the key kind of artifacts, or what they have found in Hyperledger. What are the drivers there?
Yeah, just for those who didn't hear, the question is, what were the drivers for Walmart to use a blockchain technology for what they're doing rather than just a database? Right?
Yep. Right, I would say that goes very down to the roots of blockchain and what blockchain is and why you use blockchain. And every bit you find there, that's why Walmart wants that. So the point is, you have a shared database, not in terms of database structure, but base of information between multiple different entities. So you have this integrating point where you have a one image and one truth of, one shared truth of data. And that is shared between different entities which each have their own stake in the network. So as I said, not every part of the network has their own peer with all that information, but those critical parts of the network, they each have that same image of the data. They have each equal access to the data, and each information which comes to the network goes through, Fabric has a very specific consensus model, which, by the way, is very flexible. So in this case, there is a specific definition of what are the conditions for the information to enter. But you have the ability to control what information under which condition goes into the network. So these different parts to that, they all play together to give you the benefit of why to use, in this case, Fabric for the solution.
Yeah, but you could have implemented shared database solution, right?
You wouldn't, many of those things, so that's a generic blockchain discussion, right? And many of those benefits.
For a particular case, I would say. I don't want to make it generic, I want to make it focused on
So,
the
I can speak only general because I'm not from Walmart, yeah, but what I can tell you is that the benefits you get is, for example, in database, there is no way to control from multiple participants' point of view what information goes into your database. You might implement some, cumbersome mechanism which will reconcile maybe something, but not in this way, right? So that's the first step. How the transaction goes in, how the confirmation of the transaction happens or not. The other part is that it was discussed in one of the keynotes, the CAP theorem, which describes basically the benefits you have from having this kind of mechanism in place, which guarantees the availability of the information on multiple different locations at the same time and in very consistent manner. That's something what you cannot do across replicated database, because that would be the solution, right? So you will have many conflicts. For example, conflict in Fabric basically doesn't exist in the same way as it exists RDBMS. Of course, there is a conflict possible, but the implications are different. Yeah? So those things you will not find anywhere else, and the solutions to them you will not find anywhere else than in blockchain.
I would totally agree with Peter and put it in very simple way that in single window, the data owns by single window. But in blockchain, the data is owned whoever puts the information. So it's your data. It's not anymore single window data. And that makes a huge difference, because now everybody owns their own data, and then they can share it, whoever they want, and build new value-added services and so on.
Yeah, you can own data, but the Walmart controls the data, right? So
That's the point. Does not, right? It's the driving key stakeholder, but Walmart has their own copy of the data, but doesn't own it. Let's define what is ownership, but that's for different discussion.
That's
but in
Walmart
this case,
and the other company makes a membership, is it?
say again?
The Walmart and the other company to make the membership, not only Walmart to own the data.
Yeah, that's the membership of the network and the definition of the consensus, which state, it might state that only Walmart is the one who says what's inside. That's not the case in this network, but it's also possible. But generally in blockchain, the condition would be that these multiple different stakeholders need to have their say before the information is actually included in the network. And that applies here as well.
And just as a note, we're a few minutes over, so I want to not stop this lively conversation, but it might be a good note to end on here is that implementation of these blockchain solutions, specifically for supply chain, are going to be very important to show the value. Why? Why are you using this? Why should you use this? Could you use something else? And I think that's going to be really remarkable as we see these companies start to show numbers and hopefully either profit side or cost side value of why they're using this and what they've seen from it that they could not do with other technologies. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you all for joining this panel. Hope you have a good time here this week.
Thank you.